Good afternoon. My name is Zach. I'm the Customer Success Manager at CAT Software. Jeff Pauline's going to be joining as well. He's our one of our product managers here at CATS. And pretty cool topic today. It's a thing that, honestly, I do these webinars as a way to, my job is to make sure that people that are in CATS, that are using CATS, are getting the most out of the product, are informed, are confident in using what we have to offer. And the scorecards are one of those features where, gosh, there is documentation online for it, but we get a fair amount of questions, and I'm doing this partly to have just sort of this webinar, have the open sort of Q&A session that we do, and I also just want to kind of have the recording of it that we can put on YouTube and show folks later on. So again, a couple reminders, these webinars are always recorded, as I mentioned, so you'll get a link to this tomorrow afternoon via email. We're also going to put this up on our YouTube page that you can check out typically by the end of the week, if not sooner than that. So yeah, today's topic, candidate scorecards in CATS. If you joined us last month, it was a pretty detailed but somewhat high-level overview of submitting candidates through CATS. So walking them through your workflow, choosing a certain stage or stages, if you will, to where you are submitting a candidate's resume off to someone for review, whether that's a colleague, whether that's a hiring manager, a contact record, as we would say in CATS. We sort of walk through how to build out those reviews, mostly via a workflow trigger. The other way that you can do it, it's not really an other way, it's more of an additional way, I guess, that you can do it. To get a little bit more detailed, a little bit more structure in those reviews is with a scorecard. So you can almost think of it as like an interview template that you can use as part of that submittal process. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to keep it kind of brief because, again, we talked about kind of the whole submittal process last time. Today we're going to focus specifically on building those scorecards and submitting them as a part of that overall submittal process. We'll do a little bit of quick review, but again, we've got a whole video. We spent a whole hour talking about the submittal process itself last time. So again, just kind of a quick rundown. With these scorecards, we're going to talk about who can use them. We'll talk about creating, adding categories and skills within those scorecards, and then a couple different ways that you can sort of implement that submittal process and use those scorecards. You can either do it via a workflow trigger, or you can manually sort of create a submittal by creating a calendar event. That's going to be more of like an interview type of setup where you say, hey, this person is going to meet with this person at this time, and we'll set that date. We'll talk about what the reviewer sees when they're sent that scorecard, and then after the review happens, then what? How do you go into CATS? How do you view that review that was left? And if you've got automation set up to where it's going to move them on to the next workflow step, you'll be able to obviously view that information within CATS as well. So who can review candidates using scorecards? If you remember last week, or last month rather, seemed like it was a week ago, we talked about the submittals and sort of what the different types of people who can review the submittals and it's basically leave a note, hit approve or decline, and that's it. Scorecards are a little bit more in depth, but it's not sort of the same people that can utilize those scorecards as reviews. So you can send a review via scorecard to a hiring manager, which are, again, unique to the HR version of CATS. And you can send it to a full user within your system. So if you've got, colleagues that are in there working with you in CATS, and when I say a full user, it's just that. It doesn't matter which version of CATS you're on. If you're on the agency version, if you're on the HR version, your colleagues can act as reviewers, hiring managers, if you will, as well. Who cannot review candidates using scorecards? Contacts. So if you are on the agency version of CATS and you're familiar with contacts, these are your decision makers, HR people. You can do the candidate submittals, but you wouldn't be able to do a scorecard review with those folks. Again, quick review. These are the exact slides I used when we talked about the submittals. Hiring manager users, full users, they can be sent a scorecard as part of the review process. Contacts cannot. All right, so that's kind of an overview. Just a kind of a quick, again, review of who the scorecards can be sent to. Now let's actually dig in and start building out some scorecards and see how it works. So we're going to pause the screen share here and we will hop over into CATS. Just give me one moment there. Okay, so now we're back into CATS. And again, as a quick review, we do these videos and we do these webinars and they're super helpful, but sometimes it's easiest just to hop in and kind of look at things yourself. That's why we have, when you click this question mark for support, got links right here for the knowledge base and those pre-recorded videos. Honestly, most of what I'm going to talk about today, if not everything, there happens to be a knowledge base article right here for creating and editing candidate scorecards. So how to create them, how to implement them in your workflow, creating those events, what the reviewer sees, all that's within this article. So this is just, kind of me narrating through things that are in this article, but you can always go check that out either through the main website or through the help menu within CATS, or just by going to help.cats1.com is the web address for our knowledge base. All right, so creating those scorecards within a job. First thing you need to do is you will have right here a section called Review Process. And within that is a button called Edit Scorecard and Steps. That's going to take you out to a page that looks something like this. Now, what you can do within this scorecard is I can build categories. So I've got like general and I've got skills here. And then below that, I have individual items that the reviewer can score the candidate on. And sometimes you're able to just sort of, build those from scratch. Sometimes, maybe let's start off of one that we're kind of using for some other jobs. So you'll see a button right up here that says copy from job. And here's all the jobs in my system. And I've got a digital marketing specialist job here. I'll click that. And now you can see, boom, that added like, 2, 3 more different categories that I already have sort of set up. And so that I don't have to rebuild this every time, I can sort of build one and then use that sort of as my template and then kind of go from there. So that's what I did here. In this job in particular, I'm hiring for a cafe manager. So social media experience, don't think I really need. Programming languages, yeah, let's toss that one. Skills, that's okay. Languages, yeah, that's fine. We'll delete that one. And so, okay, maybe this is a decent place to start, but I'm going to add a category here that isn't necessarily being captured already. So I just click the button and let's call it industry experience. Sure. And I'll add a skill to that and we'll say management. Maybe I'll add another one called customer service. And I could go on and on here, but let's say hiring / interviewing is a skill that's going to be very important for someone that is managing my cafe. Okay, good enough. So you get the idea. Here are things that the reviewer, probably the interviewer, is going to be reviewing, is going to be scoring this candidate on. So I can create this. Once that's created, I am going to add the scorecard to be sent to the reviewer on a specific stage in my workflow. This is the workflow that I have for this job. And for this example, I have a status called Submit to Hiring Manager. I'm going to go ahead and click the green plus sign for this status. And let's call it Hiring Manager Interview. And it's going to ask for reviewers. So at this point, as I start typing into this box, it's going to look for either full users in my system, or it's going to look for any hiring manager users in my system. So this is kind of where we talked about before, the folks that can and cannot use scorecards as part of the review process. I happen to have myself in here as a hiring manager, so I'm going to go ahead and say, yep, this is going to be sent to me. Another callback from our submittal webinar that we did last month, you are able to add multiple reviewers to this. In doing so, you can tell the system, all right, we're going to need approval from either one or all of the hiring managers for this person to move forward or to be approved. We're just going to keep it simple. We'll do it one for now. You're also going to see the type. So this is where we say, okay, this is going to be a scorecard that's sent to them, or this is just another way to set up a candidate submittal for approval like we did in the webinar that we focused on last month. But we're talking about scorecards now, so we're going to keep that at scorecard. We also touched on this last time as well, approved status and declined status. Again, this is one where I can say, all right, if the candidate is approved, we're going to move them to, let's say, this status. And if the candidate declines, we're going to move them over to, let's say, not in consideration. And that's one where, again, based on what the reviewer decides, we're going to move them to a given status in the workflow. The purpose, just kind of think of it as a header. You know, it's not required, but I can just say something like interview template for cafe manager. Cannot talk and type. Maybe I just can't type. Maybe that's the problem. It's not even talking and typing, it's just typing. So that's there. One other thing that you can do when you're creating the scorecard is key questions. So these are the same questions that I was working on before, but if I want to highlight some questions, you know, maybe I've got this big interview template, but I'm only scheduling, you know, 15 minutes, and so there's 2 or 3 questions that I really want the reviewer to focus on, or categories that I want the reviewer to focus on. I can start checking some boxes here. And so again, let's say, you know, one of the big responsibilities that this particular manager is going to be doing is hiring and interviewing, you know, employees for my cafe. I want to focus on that. And I also want to make sure that they know what they're doing. They want to know about the company that they're applying for. So let's just pick a couple of those random ones to highlight. And then I just hit okay, done. And so now I can see that when I change a candidate to the submit to hiring manager status, it's going to submit my hiring manager interview scorecard. So now we'll hop back over to CATS, and I'm going to work. I'm going to do my thing. And let's say that Jeff has applied for this particular job. And I'm going to add them to the pipeline, and I'm going to change them to submit to hiring manager. Change the status. And this is the fun of doing kind of like the live webinar and having to hop around and do a couple things. All right, so we'll pause the sharing settings here. If I hop over into my email, I have received an email that says, hey, Katz has sent you a new review. Jeff Pauline for Cafe Manager. A new review step is pending. Please complete the review. This is a hiring manager. This is myself receiving an email as a hiring manager saying, hey, this candidate has been submitted for your review. So I will click the link. And here it is. Now I'm already signed in to Katz. If I'm not, it's just going to ask me for my username and password. No use, hopping through all those loops for the presentation here. But that's what's going to happen. I'm going to click. I've got a tab here where I can sort of review the candidate resume once it loads. There we go. I can also double check the job description as well. The purpose I talked about, right? So here's interview template for Cafe Manager. And here's the scorecard that was created by me for this particular job. I left programming languages in there. I'm not sure why. But I've got knowledge of company and I've got it highlighted here. Hiring and interviewing. I also have that sort of highlighted here. And so as the reviewer, category by category, I can rate them on a scale of 1 to 4. 1 being a strong no, 2 being a no, 3 being a yes, 4 being a strong yes. So we can kind of rate them category by category. I can also leave notes individually for the items within the categories. So let's say with hiring and interviewing, boom, 4 stars. I'm going to leave a note for this one that says, interviewed all applicants at last job. Knowledge of company, I'm going to say, boom, strong no, or maybe it's just a no. And I'm going to say thought, or we'll just say didn't do their homework. And so you get the idea. Category by category, item by item, you can score the candidate. And then at the bottom, it's pretty similar to the candidate feedback, the submittal that we did previously. So in the final note section, I can say, overall good interview. Let's move forward. Even though they didn't do their homework on the company and they don't have very good programming languages, that's fine because they're going to run a coffee shop. We'll hit approve. And again, you approve this candidate. And again, I'm a hiring manager here, so just kind of a quick review. Here's any jobs that were sort of submitted to me, any jobs that are pending my approval, any candidates that are pending my approval, I can kind of view from here, as well as any jobs or candidates that I sort of worked on previously. All right, we're going to pause the sharing here, hop back over into Katz. All right. And so now if I jump back over here, and we are going to, well, actually just looking at the pipeline here, if you'll remember, I set it up to say, okay, if the hiring manager approves the candidate, this is the status that we're going to switch them to. Boom, right there, I can already see that they've moved over to first interview as the status. The owner of the job, the owner of the candidate is going to receive an email that says, hey, so-and-so hiring manager approved this candidate. If I go into Jeff's profile, I will see a reviews section. And I can see right here, Zach, hiring manager, viewed the candidate on this date, gave them the thumbs up. And I can click the button right here to view the scorecard, scorecard that was left. So I can say didn't do their homework. Interviewed all applicants at last job. So here's all the notes, here's all the things that were left for that particular candidate, which can be viewed again by myself can be viewed by any other candidates, or not, sorry, candidates, any other users that would be in my site on my team for collaboration purposes. Now, the other thing that you can do is, in lieu of having it be having the review sent off by a workflow status, you can also just sort of manually create an event that's going to involve the candidate and the hiring manager, and then that review is just sort of there when you want it to happen, because you'll have you'll have the calendar event that gets created, at which point the interviewer can go into their email, view the scorecard, make that review, at their leisure. So it's one of those, obviously they don't have to do it right away when they get the email, but it just sort of in the instance I showed before, but this is one where it sort of creates the calendar event as opposed to just kind of being fired off by the workflow trigger. So let's take a look back at that. I'm going to go ahead and clean up my tracks here just a little bit. We're going to remove the pipeline. And let me pause the sharing here while I work my magic. 1 second. Okay, so now we're back on Jeff's profile, and I can see that Jeff has been added once again to the pipeline for the cafe manager. Currently, they're a new candidate. When I add a candidate to a pipeline for a job that has a review, the review section within the candidate profile is going to light up with some information here. It says, hey, I can see that this candidate is in the pipeline for this job. Do you want to schedule an event? And then this is pretty similar to how you would set it up, a calendar event in CATS. Set the date, set the time. Let's say tomorrow, 11 a.m. And we'll hit yes. And let me refresh the page here. Cool. So now there is a pending review for Jeff sent to the hiring manager. And if I hop back over to my email, again, putting on my hiring manager hat here, looks a little bit different than before. It's basically saying, hey, here's a calendar invite with yourself, with the candidate, and here's a link to view the scorecard. So I can confirm the event, I can view the scorecard. There's now information on the event within the scorecard itself. And then again, I can fill that out, leave notes, etc. So again, it's just one extra little piece to the submittal process that we have. Wasn't really enough time to throw that in with the submittal webinar that we did last month. I wanted to give this its own kind of purpose. And yeah, so at this point, I think that's going to cover that part of it. I want to open up for a Q&A, so feel free to throw some questions at me in the questions box here. I will gather a couple of those and answer them here in just a moment. Thanks. All right, just a little bit quieter today, and that's totally fine. So had one question that went back kind of to the just sort of creating the scorecard itself. Let me get my screen share back up here. So yeah, to get to this screen where we're actually creating the scorecard, within the job itself, you will see a review process card or tab, if you will, depending on your layout. And to get to that, you click the button that says Edit Scorecard and Steps. And this is where you can add a category, sort of change what the different sub items within the categories there are, and sort of build out that scorecard. Had another question, a couple questions that came through. Essentially one scorecard can be created per job. So if you're in a scenario where you want to ask multiple questions depending on the reviewer, or different questions depending on the reviewer, I might explore just using maybe just a basic candidate submittal at first, and then maybe implementing a scorecard later on. But yeah, it's essentially one scorecard per job. I mean, you could even run into where once they pass, let's say a candidate passes, the initial screening, maybe throw them in a pipeline for a different job and then run through a process there that has a different scorecard. A little bit of manual work and moving them from one pipeline to the other, but certainly you could have multiple scorecards, multiple reviewers, that type of thing in that type of scenario. Not a great answer, but I hope it answers your question. Is there a way to send a scorecard besides sending it in a calendar invite? There is. So that's kind of what we talked about earlier, where manually I just sort of went in and just said, hey, this person, let's create an event for this, for this time. What we're doing here is we're saying, okay, once a candidate reaches a certain step within my hiring process, that is when I'm going to send the scorecard for review. So it wouldn't be manually going in and creating that event, creating the calendar event. The scorecard itself will be sent because I changed the candidate status to blank. You can kind of pick and choose here. Let's say instead of submitting to hiring manager, I wanted to put it on, there's one called HM interview. Boom, and it's going to kind of happen that way. So really you just kind of choose, it almost acts like a workflow trigger when you choose the status that it's going to be put on. And then yeah, manually creating an event. So let me get a review set up here. Just going through the questions here, guys. Be with you in just a second here. It's possible to get a notification once the scorecard has been submitted. Most of that's going to go through the email. We are always looking for new things to add notifications for within CATS, specifically in this like little notification icon that pops up here. Scorecard submitted does not count as a notification at this point. That's really good feedback. We'll run that by the team. But for now, just kind of keep an eye on your email. And you can definitely set up workflow triggers as well that can email yourself, a colleague, whomever, that says, in addition to when the review has been completed, you can set those in place for when a candidate has been set, to a given to a given workflow status. You're going to email that will tell you that. So yeah, to manually create an event, to hop back to that one. So again, let me just sort of set up a review here, and we'll say offered, or we'll say maybe consider later. And let's put myself in there. Again, these are all the kind of funny details that you wouldn't necessarily have to do live, but we're just gonna do this during the webinar here, so it's not beautiful, but we'll do what we have to do. Okay, so now I've got a review step set up for this card, or for this job rather. I'm going to travel back in time, remove Jeff from the pipeline for that job. All right, and so now we're going to add Jeff to the pipeline for that cafe manager position, which again, we have a scorecard set up for now. In doing that, once I refresh the page here, I've got a review section where I can see that, okay, Jeff is in the cafe manager pipeline. I've got an icon right here. It says schedule event. And then in doing that, that's going to create the calendar event. That's going to include the candidate. That's going to include the reviewer. In the email that gets sent to the reviewer will be a link to the scorecard. Great questions, guys. Really appreciate them coming through. I'll give it just another minute here, though. Looks like I've addressed most, if not all of them. Yep. So we'll give it another minute or so, and now we might end things a little bit early today, which is fine by me. We'll give it one more minute here. Cool. All right. Well, that sounds good. Thanks a lot, guys. Once again, appreciate you stopping in. This will be sent to you via recording. The recording will be sent to you via email coming up tomorrow afternoon, and we will also get this on our YouTube page as well. Just kind of a reminder, always, always, always feel free to check out our knowledge base. Lots of links, lots of helpful articles in there. Also links to upcoming webinars, as well as webinars that we've done in the past. So a lot of good information in there, and we will hopefully see you next month. Have a good one, guys. Take care.